So as you can see, this blank right here is in pretty rough shape. That void on the top is in a place that keeps me from using a screw to mount it to the lathe at all, whether it's a woodworm screw or a faceplate. So what I did instead is I used this piece of walnut that had a recess on one side, and I hot glued the blank to that walnut disc, and then I was able to mount it to the chuck, and using the tailstock for support I was able to turn the outside. Now that the blank is securely mounted to the lathe, I can go ahead and start to rough shape the outside. So at this point I'm really just trying to take off the bark and see what kind of possibilities are available. So I've decided to mount the piece to the chuck using a tenon for hollowing. The reason why is because with pieces like this that you don't know what's under the surface, there could be a void or a fault line or anything underneath this surface as you cut a little bit further. And the thing you don't want to do is have a recess where you're going to put the jaws in and expand out, because you could very easily split your blank along the fault line if there was one. So at this point, it might look like I'm making a bowl. And to be honest, I was up until around this point. So the more I turned it, the more I realized how beautiful the wood was. I decided I wanted something a little less utilitarian than a bowl. It was at this point that I decided to make this into a hollow form, figuring that it would be out and people could enjoy the beauty of it on a more regular basis, other than just when I pull this bowl out of the pantry. When it came time to part off the piece of wood that I used to mount the blank to the lathe, I realized just how strong a hold the hot glue had. I tried to pry it off, it didn't work. I ended up having to turn it off. I ended up having to cut the hot glue, or at least cut enough of it away that I could pry the piece off. I was very surprised how well this worked. Now that I got my mounting block cut off, I'm feeling pretty good. So I started to form the top of the piece, and I quickly realized just how poor a condition the top of this thing was. But I went ahead and I kept turning it because I'm ever hopeful that it's going to turn out just fine despite the challenges. I'm going to use my hollower tool number 1 from Easy Wood Tools to begin the hollowing process. The top part of this thing was a real challenge. With all the spaces and hollows, it's just very difficult to get in there. But I got it done. Now I'm using the hollower number 2 to get in and start to cut away some of the material under the lid. And you can see here how poor a condition the rim is, which I'm going to address that later. But these Easy Wood tools are really nice, and they do a really good job of getting down inside the piece and cutting away those materials that you really can't see. It does a great job making the blind cuts around the shoulder of the vessel. As I mentioned before, the top rim on the vessel so far was in pretty poor shape. So what I did is I used some sandpaper and a piece of MDF as a platen to sand a flat on the top edge around the rim so that I could add this piece of walnut to the top of the piece. And that is going to add a little bit of extra contrast and interest. So I felt like that was the right way to go. So I went ahead and glued that on there. This piece of wood actually turned out to be quite striking, and it had some really large, deep voids. And typically I like to use turquoise to fill voids and things in my pieces, but these were so large and so deep, you know, I was kind of concerned because turquoise can be kind of expensive. So I was wandering around Hobby Lobby, and I ended up on the glitter aisle. I wasn't sure if it was going to work out because, you know, I kind of thought glitter it might be a little hokey, but I figured, you know, it's just wood and it does grow on trees, so I gave that a shot. It turned out to be a much bigger success than I had anticipated. So what I basically did is I filled the voids with glitter. I basically poured it in. I used a popsicle stick. I used various things to pack it in as best I could. And then I used thin CA to lock it all together. Thin CA is the viscosity so thin that it's able to get down in and around the particulate and lock it into a material very similar to the effect that you get from epoxy, except that you can fill it with glitter, lock it in with CA, and you can finish your project the same day, whereas epoxy requires an overnight cure. Once you give the CA a little while to dry and cure up, then you can go back with a scraper and smooth the surface to the surrounding wood. This was my first attempt at this, so my process wasn't without some hiccups. So I had to go back and revisit, refill things, retouch things. So, you know, but that's to be expected. So somehow I managed to lose the footage of me shaping the top of the vessel with the walnut piece, but here it goes. You can imagine how that went. So we do a little bit of sanding as we get ready to do the finish. Now this isn't a shape that's easily reverse mounted with coal jaws, so what I did is I used a paper towel as cushion and reverse mounted it right on the chuck. Now in this case you don't want to tighten this up too much, you just want to tighten it up enough that it won't spin as you attempt to cut it. So as you can see, the outside of the piece has already been finished. So I'm going to go ahead and form the foot on the vessel. And when I get done with that, I'm going to sand it. Now when I'm sanding, the thing is you want to kind of feather the edge so that the finish on the bottom and the finish on the top of the piece will blend together nicely. I prepare the surface for finish by applying a little bit of Yorkshire grit to get a nice shine, and then I follow up by applying 12 coats of thin CA with paper towels, the same way that I did the top part of the vessel. Now that the CA finish has been applied, it's time to finish the finish. And what I mean by that is if you want a really nice, clear shine on your piece, you have to flatten the surface of the finish. So what I do with that is I wet sand with 800 grit. You really want to take your time here and make sure that you basically flatten out the entire surface. So when there's no shine left, then you know you got it. So I sand it, dry it, sand it, dry it in preparation for the next step, which is using the micro mesh pads, which go from 1200 grit all the way up to 12,000 grit. There's 9 of these micro mesh pads. I'm not going to go through each step, but I will show a couple of them in the video. While I go through the sanding, I quickly want to just say that this experiment went really well. If you follow me on this channel or any of the other social media networks, you know that I like to try different things, and this one was a big success. I was really happy with the piece. These buffing wheels will take the finish on your piece from awesome to amazing. I highly recommend them. Okay, that was fun. My glitter experiment worked out far better than I had expected. It's always good to experiment in the shop and try different things. You never know what's going to happen. And if it doesn't work out to your liking, you can adjust your design on the fly. Something that I like to do, design on the fly. Or you always have another project that you could do to replace it. Because wood does in fact grow on trees. All right. So a couple of things I wanted to mention. The CA product that I use in this video is the Starbond product. It's the super fast thin. I did another video on this. I really cannot say enough about how much I really enjoy this product. I've tried all kinds of CA products, never been happy with any of them. This is the first time. So if you want to try out Starbond CA, and I'm sure you won't regret it, you can head over to their website at starbond.com and you can use the code DJ15 to get 15% off of your order, off your total order. And I also, in this video, I used the Easy Wood hollowing tools. Now, these are carbide hollowing tools. And I have to tell you, they worked out really well. I'm super impressed. I was able to hollow this out with minimal trouble, and I was able to achieve a nice smooth finish on the inside that required very little sanding. Now, I understand that they've released some negative rake cutters. I'm very interested in trying that in a future project. So stay tuned because I just might be able to do that. Before you go, I just want to mention a couple of things really quickly. Down below in the description, I'm putting in Amazon affiliate links to all the products that I use that are available on the Amazon site. You can, if you follow those links, it helps me out because I get a little bit of kickback from Amazon, and it doesn't cost you anything extra to purchase the things that I suggest by using those links. Even if you're not going to buy those things, if you use those links to go to Amazon, it also helps me out. So anyway, thank you guys for joining me in the shop today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope that this encourages you to get out there and try some different things in your shop. And don't be afraid to fail because, you know, I went into Hobby Lobby thinking, you know, glitter, but this turned out to be one of my favorite projects. So I just want to encourage you all to think outside the box and above all else, have fun, dread not, and make something. Peace.